Hello, thank you so much for having me. My name is Simran. The first time I came to the US to do a talk, it was for a TED talk, and they told me when you speak to Americans at the start, just slow down your talking. Just give them a chance to really understand your accent and just really slow it down. And I remember thinking, like, what is the literacy rate here? Like that of a fifth grader? And I think it is. But I ended up going into it. It was a lot of fun. And I'll give you a little bit of a background to myself. So this was me and my dad when I was growing up in New Zealand. Anka started by saying that he was originally Indian. And I just want to say, Anka, you still are. So I was born in India, moved to New Zealand when I was 2. And this might seem like, a cute photo. But I see it as photographic proof of child labor. My dad was making me wash the car. There is a bucket behind me. My dad didn't believe in car washes. He was quite frugal. And honestly, I thought that we were really, really poor growing up. We had plastic chairs instead of couches. And we didn't have mattresses with the place that you put. We didn't have anything like that. We had the mattresses on the ground. I remember going to the DVD store and my dad was asking, do you still have this movie in VCR? And the guy laughed. They were like, we've moved on. It's DVD players now. But it only occurred to me, only 5 years ago, that my dad was a software engineer in the 90s. So we were doing okay, but he was making us live like tech bros that are allergic to furniture, and we just had nothing in the house. But my dad and my mum taught me a really good sort of information, really good life lesson around being frugal, but they weren't really that great investors. And so growing up, I realized that there wasn't really a place for people like myself to learn how to invest. When I was investing, I remember going to events and they were, very male-dominated, very male-focused. I think it didn't help that I was always dressed in black. I kind of looked like a waiter when I would, go up to a group of guys at an investor event and try to chat with them. And so I decided that I wanted to build the world's first and eventually the world's largest investing education media company. And so that's what Girls That Invest became. I had this idea that I wanted to build first short form content like Instagram. Then that would lead into long form content like a podcast with 10 million downloads or a newsletter. And then I would want that to lead to a paid product. And I later on learned that that's called a funnel. But my idea behind it was, how do I build something of use? And it ended up doing quite well. We were in Forbes, we were in Vogue, we were able to travel around the world. Recently, I went with the Prime Minister of New Zealand as part of the delegation to do a trade deal with India. And I have to say, what was going on in the US with the tariffs really worked in our favor because we didn't look so bad. We were kind of like the nice party. I feel like the Indian government was like, New Zealand's not too hard on this. We should work with them a little bit more. I also want to clarify, I've noticed that when I talk to Americans about the Forbes 30 under 30 thing, they don't really seem to like it. I feel like it's probably to do with all the people that go to jail that have come from the Forbes 30 under 30 list. And I just want to clarify something very quickly. I went on the Forbes 30 under 30 list for one reason and one reason only, and that was to find a husband. I got on the Forbes 30 under 30 Asia list, and there were 2 other New Zealanders on that list. One was a basketball player, and I kind of thought we're both probably going to be jobless in 10 years. This isn't going to work. The other one was a very nice, very stable looking venture capitalist who had been at the same company since he was 19. So you're probably thinking what I'm thinking. Very stable guy, very loyal, not going to cheat. And so I ended up reaching out to him, told him he had 12 months to propose to me. He proposed 2 months ago. We booked in a wedding venue for next year. So the first lesson, thank you. The first lesson is if you have a goal without a plan, that is just a dream. I'm kidding. The most important thing that I like to take away from my business is this is where our downloads are. We are in almost every country in the world, 196 countries. And a lot of times when people ask, well, Sim, how did you build a business from New Zealand, tiny little island, sometimes there's like maps without New Zealand on it. How did you build from there and build a product that is so useful to so many different people in so many different areas and different languages, different cultural norms, and how did you scale that to millions in revenue? So I wanted to talk about how exactly I did it. I started Girls That Invest in March 2020. It was a COVID baby, like most things. And I really believed that the growth that we've had have been kind of part of a number of small steps that we have taken, a couple of lessons that have occurred over time. This here is a graph of how we have grown our Instagram, because Instagram is the top of our funnel. And so I hope that what I share today, if you're at the start of your journey, you'll be finding the more recent information more helpful. If you're a little bit further along, the lessons that I learned later on might be more of use. The first lesson, though, was on day 100. And I realized that done is better than perfect. This here on the left is a very scary photo to me. And it's scary because at the time of taking that, I thought that was a professional photograph. I thought that was a photo shoot. And now I see it and there's so many things wrong with it. I mean, first of all, we're facing away from the natural light. We're a podcast, but there's only one microphone. Not that it's like hugely important, but I didn't shave my underarms and that's kind of showing. But at the time, I just thought that like, this is good enough. And this was on our website. This was what we thought was like professional photography. And a year later, we had professional photography. We were featured in Vogue, but I really believe that if you're a perfectionist, sometimes being a perfectionist is not the best way to build a startup because you just don't wait until things are perfect. You have to be okay with doing something at 80%, or in this case like 10%, than trying to do nothing at all at 100%. And if you wait until you get everything right, I really do believe, and what was being said earlier, I actually believe that you should be embarrassed by your first attempt. Because if you just keep waiting, then someone else might get ahead of you, and you'd rather be the person that gets started and just makes it better over time. The second thing that I learned was about a year in, around day 300, and it was around the idea of being 1% better every day. This here is another very embarrassing post. This was our first Instagram post. It looks like Canva vomited onto it. And at the time, I was speaking to my dad, and my dad said, you know, Simran, Beyonce still watches back all of her performances and critiques herself. And I remember thinking, how does my dad know who Beyonce is, first of all? But also, that's a really good point. And if it's good enough for Beyonce to keep looking at what she's doing and trying to make it better, then it's good enough for me. And so I would start just every single day looking at what we were doing, whether it was the Instagram, speaking, the podcast. I reached out to everyone I knew. And I was like, hey, please tell us what we could do better. And it was really helpful. I mean, it was brutally honest, but it was helpful. I remember someone once said to me, they were like, hey, when you talk on the podcast, I don't know if it's because of your New Zealand accent, but you finish your sentences with an inflection, and it kind of sounds like you're asking a question or you're unsure of yourself. For example, we would say like the S&P 500 went up 4%, And so it was small things that I had to change. I once did a speech and I had a Q&A afterwards, and I asked for some feedback. And one of my friends said, Sim, when someone asks you a question, it really helps if you just pause once they ask the question and kind of look like you're thinking about it and ponder and then answer. Because what I would do is if someone had a question, my brain kind of goes, I understand, and I quickly answer it. I know the answer. But they said just, make it seem like you're putting a lot of thought into it. And all these little things started to add up, because for the first year, no one listened to the podcast, no one followed us on Instagram, no one really cared, no one followed our newsletter. But every single week, by improving it, we sort of saw a growth pattern that kind of looked like this, and it just spiked upwards. Now, the next lesson I had was around day 800, and this was really important for me. This lesson was, if you're being told no, you're asking the wrong person. This lesson I got from the mother hen of business, Kris Jenner. And Kris Jenner is someone that I have been watching like a hawk since I was a child. I think Keeping Up with the Kardashians is such a valuable marketing tool. I was taking notes. And she would always keep saying this thing. She'd say, if you're being told no, you're asking the wrong person. Did you just write that down? Good. If you're being told no, you're asking the wrong person. And initially I was confused by that. But I understood what she meant. In November 2021, the Girls That Invest podcast just hit its stride. It was at 1% better. We hit a few viral posts, and it made the podcast skyrocket. And in November 2021, we were the #1 business podcast on Apple and Spotify in the US, UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. We beat out every single business podcast on the charts. And we were still running this from the equivalent of like the Ohio of New Zealand. Like, it was a very small town that we were running this from in our bedrooms. And so we were very proud of ourselves. So I remember thinking, oh my God, this is it. This is our moment. I'm going to wait for Alan to reach out to me. I'm going to wait for Oprah to have me on. And no one reached out. No one cared. And I thought, that's okay. What would Kris Jenner do? So I started reaching out to all the news platforms, at least in New Zealand. I was like, hey, look, we're like these 2 young Kiwi girls. We were in our early 20s back then, and we're the #1 business podcast right now. Like, that's so impressive in my opinion. And they were kind of like, that's really cute. That's really nice, but that's not something we really want to cover. And there was this one journalist that he was kind of like, oh, maybe we'll cover it, but like something else has come up, how it's like in the media cycle. And I remember thinking, if you're being told no, you're asking the wrong person. So he mentioned that he had a manager. And this manager, he said her name. He was like, Susan so-and-so. I've passed it on to her. If it's the right fit, we'll let you know. And so I thought, well, this journalist's email is his first name dot his last name at, themediacompany.com. And I thought, what if I guess his manager's email? It's probably the same structure. So I typed in, Susan dot whatever at the media company. I forwarded her the whole email thread. And I said, hey, I'd love to give you this exclusive story. I had a feeling journalists like that. And I'd love for you to cover it. We're doing really well. And not only did she email back and cover the story, she also gave me a job. And I was able to become a financial commentator at a national news site in New Zealand. I became a financial columnist, and I was on the radio with them. And it made me realize you don't have to be pushy, but if you're not getting what you want, it is okay to find someone that maybe is a senior, perhaps, or someone easier to talk to. The next lesson I had was on day 1000. This is a little bit further along in the journey. And I realized we were growing our community, but it wasn't quite right. There was something missing. And there was something that we needed to do to bond them together. And so one of the things that we thought was very important for our customers was to give them a name. What do I mean by that? Now, I've been very fascinated by gangs growing up. And one of the things that really sparked my interest was, why would someone join a gang? What made it so appealing? What made it more important? And the statistics were really sad. One of the top reasons why people join gangs is for a sense of belonging and a sense of community. Which kind of makes sense, right? Because if you think about it, back in like caveman days, we were able to survive if we were part of a community. If, a lion came or something, if you were part of a pack, you'd probably be a little bit safer than if you were on your own. If you were part of a community or a tribe, there would be food to go around and you'd get some. It didn't pay to be a lone wolf. And so being part of community is still kind of etched in our monkey brain, but the world around us has changed, but that desire for community hasn't. And you'll see it with more, newer examples, the Swifties of Taylor Swift. I mean, they're probably, they could give organized crime a run for their money, the Swifties, but they do a really good job of being a community. And they do a really good job of seeing each other and being able to say, that's one of us. And a lot of celebrities do this. I mean, you've got Justin Bieber with his Beliebers. You've got Nicki Minaj with her Barbs. And so we thought, we need to do something similar. So we asked our community, we said, what do you guys want to be called? And they came up with a name. They called themselves the Investy Besties, which I'm personally not a fan of, but it stuck. And I had someone message me the other day and she said, Sim, I was at the mechanic, I was in the waiting room, and this lady, this other Investy Bestie, was sitting there and she was reading your book. And she didn't say like this person, she said another Investy Bestie. When you give your customers the ability to identify as being part of a wider mission, you're basically saying we're not just a product, we're not just a place that you come to. You're saying we as a company have values and traits and principles that you as a person identify with, and you want other people to know that you're an Investy Bestie because you want other people to go, oh, this tells us a little bit about this person. It's a little bit like when you wear branded clothes or you wear, Nike shorts versus a different brand. You're saying to the world, hey, I am wearing this because it's telling you a little bit about myself. And so we wanted that to be a part of our customers in real life because so much of what we do is online. So giving our customers a name was a huge part of kind of taking where we started and just bringing that community to the next level. So I really challenge yourselves, for those that are further along in your journey, do your customers have a name? Can you give them a name? Just ask them what they'd like to be called. You don't have to love it. As long as they love it, that's the most important thing. Now, the final lesson that I had learned, and I probably will continue to learn more, and this is more of a newer one for me. In the last sort of couple of 100 days, I realized that community first and solutions last are the most important thing. What do I mean by that? A lot of entrepreneurs that are further along in their journey, that have got their MVP, that have understood, how to scale, and now they're kind of cruising, you start to almost like private equity your own business. And you start to look at the numbers a lot more and you go, okay, well, how do we increase the top line? How do we reduce the number of, unnecessary costs? And if someone was to dissect our business and look at it from the inside, what would they see? And sometimes you can get a little bit too wrapped into the numbers and you get a little bit too focused on how to optimize and systematize, and you kind of lose why you started doing what you were doing. And so that was a hard realization for me when I realized that, over the last couple of months, it's not necessarily been about bringing value to the community. When you cut a tree, you'll see concentric rings in the cross section of the tree. And the concentric rings are how old the tree is. Every year, you kind of see a wider concentric line and you go, okay, like you can guess the age of a tree. And I thought to myself, if someone was to dissect my business and see inside, what would I want them to see year on year? What's important to me? And so I realized that if we had the customer in the middle and someone dissected our business, I would want them to see that we were so focused on bringing value every single year, and that is what we were wrapping our business around, rather than being focused on trying to, squeeze every last dollar, try to optimize the, LTV, the lifetime customer value, dropping down the CAC, the CAC. Like, there are so many acronyms in the startup world. It is insane and it's so unnecessary. My least favorite one is TAM, total addressable market. Like, why can't we just call it all the customers we could possibly have one day? Why do we need to call it TAM? What's your TAM? Sorry, that was a bit of a offshoot. But what I like about this is it just keeps it focused and we go, okay, exactly what does our customer want? And that requires us to do something that founders hate doing, which is actually going and talking to your customers and saying, what is it that you want? And doing that with a grain of salt, of course. Henry Ford once said, if I asked our customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse rather than a car. But the idea is that you listen to your customers. And so to summarize those main key points, it's done is better than perfect. It's 1% better every day. It's don't take no for an answer. If you're being told no, you're asking the wrong person. It's give your customers a name, and of course, community first, solutions last. My name is Simran Kaur. Thank you for your time.